and welcome to the Quiet Riot, where we talk film, television, and media. We dive a little deeper into these things, and today we're doing that with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I was inspired to make this because Snow White, the live action one, is coming out on the 17th of this month, and it is probably the 17th today if everything goes well with my editing process, because let me tell you, I've been having one of those weeks where everything goes wrong. Like I'll do something and then it'll be wiped, because I tried doing this video and then halfway through my sound went away. I have tried doing my taxes. I tried doing them 3 times electronically. Couldn't do it by the end because they wanted me to pay something, which I'm like, no, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. So it's been a rough one in that way. But you know what? Life goes on. And I am here to talk about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs with you. We will be discussing the history of why it was made, its importance, film animation history, how it's gone on to inspire, and just general thoughts from a modern lens and thinking of it from the perspective of the time in which it was made as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, I hope you decide to stick around. I will have the timestamps as well, so that way if there's something you want to get to, I completely understand and you can do that. You can also check out my resources in the description box below, along with where else you can find the Quiet Riot. And Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was not the first film inspired by the original fairy tale. That honor goes to a lost film released in 1902 and titled simply Snow White. Disney's Snow White was the first animated adaptation and the first feature-length animated film released in the US. The movie may not have aged particularly well, but that doesn't change the film's historical relevance, nor does it change Snow White's artistic merit. Despite being made 88 years ago, the film's animation remains impressive. Snow White's historical relevance begins with it being the first animated feature released here in the United States. It also classic animation, also referred to as cell animation among other things, is a form of animation where each frame is hand-drawn. This technique became the most popular form of animation, lasting throughout the 20th century. Snow White took around 3 years to make, with 750 artists contributing to the animation. There was a total of 2 million paintings completed in those 3 years, and $1.4 million was spent. The film was a critical and commercial success upon its release, bringing in a whopping $8 million international and $177 million when adjusted for inflation. The film's success allowed Disney to build their Burbank studio, and at the time of the film's release, Disney was known for their animated shorts that played in theaters prior to a feature film. Disney wanted to make a film that could compete with the commercially successful live-action films at the time. And following a few years of their Silly Symphony series, Disney decided to embark on the ambitious venture. They were going to make the first full-length animated film that was an artistic and technical achievement. They also wanted it to be a financial one as well. After spending $1.4 million to make the film, they needed it to be. They were originally going to adapt Bambi as the first feature-length animated film, but instead they decided on Snow White. He made this decision based on the fond memories he had of a Snow White short film he saw as a kid. I don't know why I picked Snow White. It's a thing I remembered as a kid. I saw Marguerite Clarkin in Kansas City one time when I was a newsboy. They had a big showing for all the newsboys, and I went and saw Snow White. It was probably one of my first big feature pictures I'd ever seen. That was back in 1916 or something. Somewhere way back. But anyways, to me I thought it was a perfect picture. I had the sympathetic dwarves and things, I had the prince and the girl, the romance, I had the heavy. I just thought it was a perfect story. In the making of Snow White, they used a multi-plane camera, an invention by Walt Disney that allowed you to see depth in animation. The camera was used in Disney's Oscar-winning short film, The Old Mill, A Silly Symphony, released a month prior to the premiere of Snow White. One of the greatest concerns for the film was that people weren't going to respond to the emotional aspects of the film. Disney was used to making slapstick animation, but would they love drama in their animated film? Well, according to reviews at the time and the reception of the audience, they loved it. Upon the film's release, Snow White was a success. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs made people laugh, and when Snow White was poisoned, they cried with the men that loved her. The beauty of Snow White was brought on by the technical animation and multiplane camera was one of the ways in which the audiences connected with the material. The world and its characters became dimensional beings, and despite being animated, the audience relates to them in the same way they do watching live-action film. The beauty of the world Snow White looks like a gorgeous painting, a place we could really be. Time magazine said Snow White was as exciting as a Western, as funny as a haywire comedy. Daily Verity had many nice things to say. Snow White is the genius of craftsmanship, which can make an endless series of line drawings and color washes so eloquent in human expression and trouble and antic joy, so potent in evoking audience emotion, laughter, excitement, suspense, tears. Yes, indeed, tears. The animation used in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is one of the things that makes the horror and the drama and romance and every other aspect of the film so vibrant. The use of colors, whether dark or more bright, certainly adds to the characters, and there is and the story overall. The way in which this film uses light and shadow and the various colors is very similar to the way that film in general uses colors and uses certain silhouettes and uses fashion in order to convey a point and gets you to know and understand a character better. With 750 artists working on Snow White over the course of 3 years, there were bound to be many influences on the film. German Expressionism was a big inspiration for the film, particularly the movie's horror-esque moments. Gustav Tenggren was a Swedish illustrator and animator inspired by the work of Arthur Rachman. Tenggren had a strong use of shadow, similar to German Expressionism. Gustav worked on the film as a concept artist as well as its non-animated tie-in. In the book, Walt Disney and Europe, European influences on the animated feature films of Walt Disney, you will find many images from artists that worked on the film, inspirations from artists throughout Europe, and images of places that were used as inspiration. Page 50, Disney said, "It would be good for her to be caught in the bushes showing these grotesque hands, then the wind and all the things that frighten her. Have it lead to things that make her think things are alive. But at the same time, the audience should have a feeling that it is all in her mind. Her imagination goes wild. Like the background behind her going right into blackness, that's the thing they don't do in cartoons. Maybe we'll have no sound effects on the sequence. Do the wind and water and everything with music. If you don't keep these things in the depth and the darkness, we will have a comical effect instead of a dramatic one." One of the reasons why I think kids especially connect so much with this film is because of these particular moments where you recognize that Snow White this is her imagination running amok. Thank you to the hunter and the queen and being terrified of what she's gonna do to her. So everything is quite magnified in her brain. Snow White does a great job at allowing us as the audience inside the mind of Snow White, which is why I always find it so weird when people act as if Snow White herself didn't have much of a personality or we didn't get to know her as much. Of course, she was nowhere near as layered, and that personality didn't stand out as much as, say, Belle, who's my personal favorite, and Ariel and others to come, but I do think that the character is a lot more layered than people like to say. In the 1920s, there was an influx of people in the film industry from Germany. With them, they brought popular techniques that they would utilize in Hollywood films. In the late 20s and through the 30s in particular, German Expressionism was a big part of the US film industry. And we've talked about this a lot on the channel, particularly within anything I discuss film noir. German Expressionism had a lot of influence here in the US and elsewhere in the film industry. The movement was very popular, and in the way it dealt with shadow and darkness and all of these, in the way it did angles and stuff, it was very influential on various different movements, styles, and genres throughout film history, continuing to this day, particularly in anything that is either horror or horror-esque. The book Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the art and creation of Walt Disney's classic animated film, provides a look at the artistic process during the making of the film. From early iterations of Snow White to the process of creating the dwarf's home, viewing these various depictions let us in on the details of their inspiration and how they utilize. In the final product, we are presented with a colorful palette drenched in shadow in its horror scene. As an audience, we see the world as Snow White does, all its beauty and all its darkness. Another great aspect of being able to look at a book like the art and creation of Walt Disney's classic animated film is seeing how the process of creating an animated film is very similar to a live action film, and you want everything to be right in the settings where certain things are done, and the way in which a home or a room represents the characters, and the way, and the way down to the clothes they wear, and the way the clothes they wear and the way they do their hair. And a book like that especially, but when you also like watch the making of in these, and as an audience then you watch the film and you look at how all of these different things come together to truly, you're drawn more into the story, but you get to know these characters through these as well. I look through these movies through a modern lens. We are in 2025. I was born in 1990. And it's interesting to look through all of these films, whether it's something that came out when you were a child or something that you watched as a child, and see how you respond to it differently. I've always liked Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I never really had much of a problem with it. I know, again, this film was made in the 1930s, so it's going to have a different representation of a girl and of a woman, and there are many aspects of Snow White and her character that are representative of the time, the desires, the expectations that people have on girls and women. She definitely is a lot more domestic, and she cooks and she cleans, and we see that of her in multiple scenes, but she isn't a one-note character. She certainly has a personality, and a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people say that that isn't true, that she doesn't have a personality, and that the characters since then had kind of grown a lot more as a personality, like within Cinderella, and that changes more and more as time goes. And I certainly don't think that Snow White is as layered as Disney princesses to come and other Disney characters, but Snow White, as well as the characters around her, do have personalities. They have desires and other aspects of them to make them more human. And for Snow White in particular, she has a much more domestic personality, someone who's a lot more, she's more of a motherly figure, and a lot more of would easily be kind of a 1930s housewife, but she also is a very kind and nurturing, and she's passionate about singing and animals, and these are aspects of her personality. And we also get to know the witch as being someone who's very envious and greedy and narcissistic, to say the least. And this film can also tell us a lot about empathy, and the empathy that the hunter feels, what he feels, and how he is kind of guilt-ridden by the decision that he was supposed to make regarding Snow White, and how he differs from the queen. And then all of the dwarves, they represent a different feeling, a different emotion or another aspect of their personality. And so this film itself does have a lot of personality, and it may be very, very reminiscent of the 1930s, and things are definitely going to change from there within the various different characters. But I do find that in modern media in particular, Snow White, and not only Snow White, but especially Snow White, has been depicted in a much more negative light. And the character herself, to me, I think she's a great character, especially for the time, in that we are very aware of her likes and the things that brings her joy, and we know who she is as a person, especially in terms of who the queen is, the witch is, how that differentiates from Snow White. There are several moments of this movie that lean heavily into the horror, and that is something that I personally enjoy. There's this scene with her running through the woods, and that's my favorite scene in the movie, because it is where those German expressionist roots really get to show off. There's a few other moments in that. I think the use of the huntsman and kind of his eyes coming through in the shadow, and that was then used as well in Cinderella years later. But these moments are so reminiscent of German expressionism, of horror, and as I think it's probably one of the best horror scenes that there is, because it reminds me very much of the Luton bus, which is the a term coined and named after Val Luton, who helped to manufacture the scene in Cat People, where the woman is walking down the street and she feels like she's being stalked by a cat, and then you have the sound that sounds like a panther, and then you have the bus. And to me, there are moments in this scene in particular that are very reminiscent of that. At the time of its release, Snow White was an achievement for Walt Disney and his studio. But beyond being a technical and financial achievement, the film managed to inspire artists in the industry, and it continues to do so. Till this day, Snow White's achievement is celebrated because it let animators know what could be done. New techniques, the way in which they brought it to life, the artistic efforts changed the way people saw animation. While studios today rely on churning out feature films and TV shows multiple times a year, including Disney then was able to dedicate time and money to creating a masterpiece. Those 750 artists and the inspiration of German Expressionism, Disney made Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I am not knocking modern animation. There are plenty. There's still cell animation being used. I think there's a Pakistani film recently that I really want to see, and it used a very Studio Ghibli style, and there's still that animation. And there is a lot of great animation that I really love, even though it's done digitally. But I think that because we're churning stuff out constantly for film and television, there isn't a lot of time put into all of these things, and a lot of the artistry is being left out. Things are not being thought of as much as they should, not enough time and effort are really being dedicated to making the films the way that they should. So in watching something like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I kind of sat there and just admired the animation. I admired it for what it was at the time, and then I also admired it as just the looking back on a time when people spent a lot more time trying to make something, as opposed to doing what a lot of films do now. And there are going to be times where sometimes you have to rush it because you may not have the money that you need, and so you have to be a lot quicker on it. But there's a difference between having to rev up the time because you need to not spend that money on all that time that you're taking. But then there's what's done a lot in the industry today, which is caring so much more about the quantity of something instead of the quality of that one thing that you're making. And I would love us to get back to a time in which we cared a lot more about the quality in a lot of things, but also within the film industry and elsewhere in the entertainment world, but we'll see if that happens. I think Snow White is certainly, I know Snow White was certainly a technical achievement in more ways than one, and I think it should be honored a lot more for what it was, and unfortunately it's talked down about a lot more nowadays, but I do like it, and I was kind of inspired to make this because of the Snow White live action that's coming out. I don't plan on seeing it, but that's because I haven't seen any of the live action ones. Disney's been doing remakes for years, but I just, you know, I'm keeping with the animated ones. If I want to watch them, I'll watch the animated ones. I think a big portion of that is, to me, I think the best live action one has already been made in Mirror Mirror. Personally, that's my thoughts on that. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's got Lily Collins and Julia Roberts in it, and it's really good, and I like it. And I like the way they did the dwarves in that film, because the way they're doing the dwarves in this one is bad. I think they're puppets when they should have hired. They should have listened to people. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a technical achievement. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch and or listen to me rant, rave, and discuss the wonderful Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I know from a modern standpoint it's not the greatest film ever made when you're looking at through it that, but when you're looking through it more of a technical and artistic lens, it certainly is an amazing feat, particularly for the 1930s. If what I talked about here today and film in general is something that you want to hear more about, particularly classic films and film history, please hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to be notified every single time I post. If you enjoyed this film, give it a like, and feel free to comment below with your thoughts on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Disney films, animation, what have you. I love to hear from you, and I will see you next time. Bye!